In the heart of Japan, nestled between mist-covered hills and vast forests, there was a small, peaceful village named Kawa-no-Mura. Its residents were a close-knit group of farmers, fishermen, and traders who lived in harmony with the land and the river that ran through it. The river, known as the Kawa, was vital to their daily lives, providing them with fresh water, fish, and a serene backdrop for their simple existence. Life in Kawa-no-Mura had always been peaceful. Generations of villagers had lived without trouble, their routines interrupted only by the changing of seasons. But there was one rule that every villager respected, and that was never to venture near the river after sunset. They didn't speak much about it, but everyone knew that when the sun went down, the river wasn't just a peaceful waterway, it became a dangerous and mysterious place. Elder Tanaka, the village's wise and respected figure, often reminded the younger villagers of the dangers that lurked in the river. He would gather the children around the fire at night and tell them stories of a creature known as the Kappa, a strange, amphibious being that haunted the waters. According to the legends, the Kappa had the appearance of a small, green humanoid with a shell on its back and a water-filled dish on its head. It was known to be mischievous, but far more dangerous than anyone could imagine. The Kappa was believed to drag children into the water, drowning them for fun, or worse, stealing their souls. But the most terrifying part of the story was the rumor that the Kappa had the ability to mimic voices, calling out to its victims in familiar voices, deceiving them into approaching the river. Despite the warnings, the villagers would often dismiss these tales as old superstition. But deep down, they all knew the river was not a place to be trifled with after the sun had set. One evening, as dusk fell over the village, a curious young boy named Hiroshi, eager to prove his bravery, decided to ignore the old stories. He had heard the legends countless times, but never truly believed them. The sun had just dipped behind the mountains, and a cool mist had begun to settle over the Kawa. Hiroshi had always been a skeptical boy, quick to dismiss any talk of monsters or spirits. That night, as the villagers settled in for the evening, Hiroshi felt an odd sense of adventure take over him. He couldn't resist the pull of the river. With a lantern in hand, Hiroshi slipped out of his house and made his way to the riverbank, his heart pounding in his chest. The path to the river was narrow, lined with trees whose twisted branches seemed to stretch out like dark fingers, reaching for him. But Hiroshi wasn't afraid. He was certain there was no such thing as the Kappa. When he reached the river's edge, he stood still for a moment, the mist swirling around his feet. The water was eerily still, reflecting the dim light of the lantern. He could hear nothing except the faint rustling of leaves in the breeze. But then, just as he was about to turn back, something caught his attention, a faint voice, almost like a whisper, coming from the river. "Help me, please." Hiroshi's heart skipped a beat. The voice sounded strange but familiar, almost like the voice of his younger sister, Emi. Without thinking, he rushed closer to the water, his lantern swaying with every step. As Hiroshi stood at the edge of the Kawa, the faint voice continued to call out, growing louder, more desperate. "Help me, please, it's so cold." It was unmistakably his sister's voice, the same high-pitched tone that often echoed in the village house. His heart raced with panic and confusion. Why was Emi out here, alone, at this hour? Without thinking, he stepped closer to the water's edge, his lantern illuminating the surface in strange, wavering patterns. The mist seemed to thicken, swirling around his feet and making the air feel colder. Hiroshi called out into the darkness. "Emi! Where are you? What are you doing here?" There was a long pause, and then the voice responded again, but this time with an eerie, unnatural quality. "I'm over here, Hiroshi, in the water. Please, help me." Hiroshi's mind swirled with conflicting emotions. He knew Emi would never be out here, especially not in the dark of night, by the river, where no one dared to go. Yet the voice was so real, so familiar. It sounded just like her. "Emi?" Hiroshi whispered, taking another step closer, his hand trembling as he held the lantern. The river rippled as if something large had disturbed the water. Hiroshi leaned in, the lantern held out over the water, trying to see anything that might explain the voice. He could just make out a shape emerging from the dark waters, something small, hunched, and humanoid. It seemed to rise slowly, the water dripping off its greenish skin. His heart thudded in his chest as the shape came into clearer view. A grotesque, green creature with webbed hands and a shell on its back, a face like that of a grotesque frog, and a strange, empty dish-like depression on its head. The creature's eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the lantern's light, and its mouth stretched into a grin, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. Hiroshi froze in terror. The creature wasn't Emmy. It was the Kappa. Suddenly, the creature let out a loud, gurgling laugh, its mouth opening wide. "You're not as foolish as I thought, boy. But still, close enough." Hiroshi stepped back, his legs trembling. His breath came in shallow gasps, and the lantern flickered as he nearly dropped it in fear. He had heard the stories, but now, facing the Kappa in the flesh, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Do you know what I want?" the Kappa hissed, its voice low and mocking. "I've been waiting for someone foolish enough to wander here, waiting for you." Hiroshi turned, preparing to run back to the village, but the Kappa's voice stopped him. "Oh, you'll leave. But remember this, Hiroshi. I don't just take lives, I take the very soul." The creature's grin grew wider, and the air around Hiroshi seemed to grow colder. He felt a strange pull, a magnetic force drawing him toward the water's edge. His vision blurred, and for a moment, the world around him seemed to spin. "Remember, Hiroshi," the Kappa's voice echoed in his mind, "you'll never escape once I have you. You will always belong to the Kawa." In a blur of panic, Hiroshi shook his head, his heart pounding in his chest as he staggered backward, pulling himself away from the Kappa's grasp. His legs finally regained strength, and without thinking, he turned and fled, his lantern casting erratic shadows as he ran. The voice of the Kappa followed him, echoing in his ears. "Run, Hiroshi, but you will never be free." Hiroshi didn't dare look back as he sprinted toward the village, each step heavier than the last. The path back seemed longer than it ever had before. The cold mist clung to his skin, and the voice of the creature, its eerie laugh, echoed in his mind. Hiroshi reached the village with his heart still racing, his breath coming in shallow gasps. The mist that had once clung to him now seemed to follow him, as though the Kappa itself were lurking just behind. He stumbled through the narrow streets, the faint glow of lanterns lighting his way, but it was as though the village had become a place unfamiliar to him. His mind was consumed with fear, and the weight of the Kappa's warning echoed relentlessly in his head. The villagers were already gathering in the square, preparing for the evening meal. The air was filled with the sounds of chatter and the smell of fresh rice and grilled fish. Yet, Hiroshi felt none of the warmth he usually took comfort in. He was not hungry, he was not safe. He rushed to his home, hoping to find some solace in the familiar. But as he entered, his mother's concerned eyes immediately met his, her voice soft and trembling. "Hiroshi, what happened? You look pale. What's wrong?" Without a word, Hiroshi collapsed onto the tatami mat, his hands shaking uncontrollably. His mind raced, his thoughts a chaotic blur. How could he explain what had happened by the river? How could he even begin to make sense of the creature he had seen? Before he could speak, a soft knock on the door interrupted the silence. Hiroshi's mother rose and opened the door to reveal Elder Tanaka, the village elder, who had been watching Hiroshi from a distance. His face was lined with years of wisdom, and his eyes carried the weight of countless stories that had been passed down through generations. His presence alone filled the room with a sense of gravity. "I thought I might find you here, Hiroshi," the elder said in a low voice, his gaze steady. "You have seen the Kappa, haven't you?" Hiroshi's heart skipped a beat, and he slowly nodded. He didn't know how Elder Tanaka knew, but somehow, it didn't matter. There was no escaping it now. The elder sat down beside him and let out a long sigh. "The Kappa is not just a myth, Hiroshi. It is real, and it has always been real. The stories we tell aren't just for children's amusement, they are warnings. Warnings we should never ignore." Hiroshi's eyes widened. "But why did it call me? Why Emi's voice?" Elder Tanaka's face grew somber. "The Kappa has the ability to mimic voices. It uses this trick to lure people into the water, where it can drown them. But there is something even more dangerous than its physical strength. It feeds on the soul. The Kappa isn't just after your life, Hiroshi. It wants something deeper. It wants to drag you into its world, and once you're in, you'll never escape. A shiver ran down Hiroshi's spine. He could still hear the creature's voice in his mind, the unsettling laugh that followed him all the way home. There's a way to stop it, the elder continued, his tone darkening. But it is not easy. You must confront the Kappa at the river, and you must do something very specific to defeat it. There is a ritual, an ancient method that was passed down by the first villagers who lived here. Hiroshi looked up at the elder, his fear mixing with confusion. A ritual? What do I have to do? The elder paused for a moment before speaking. The Kappa's weakness lies in the dish on its head. It is the source of its power. If you can make the Kappa bow its head and spill the water from the dish, it will lose its strength. But the creature is cunning, Hiroshi. It will try to trick you, it will play on your fears, and it will do everything it can to keep its power. If you hesitate, even for a moment, the Kappa will take you, body and soul. Hiroshi swallowed hard. The elder's words were clear, but his heart was heavy with doubt. Could he really face the Kappa again? Could he do what was necessary to survive? You must be brave, Elder Tanaka said gently. The Kappa is a force of nature, and like all creatures of the water, it will not rest until it has what it wants. But if you confront it with courage, and with the knowledge of how to defeat it, you may just survive. If not... The elder's voice trailed off, but Hiroshi didn't need him to finish. He knew the unspoken truth: if he failed, he would never return. The weight of the task ahead was crushing, but Hiroshi had no choice. He knew what he had to do. Hiroshi lay awake that night, the elder's words echoing in his mind. He could barely sleep, his thoughts filled with the haunting image of the Kappa's grotesque face, its glowing eyes, and the chilling voice that had called him to the river. He had no choice but to return. The village was no longer safe for him, and deep down, Hiroshi knew that if he didn't face the Kappa, it would come for him again, and next time, it wouldn't be as merciful. As the clock struck midnight, Hiroshi quietly slipped out of his house. The village was quiet, with only the distant chirping of crickets and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. He pulled his jacket tighter around him and grabbed the lantern that flickered dimly by the door. He had to be prepared this time, prepared for whatever the Kappa had in store for him. The path to the river seemed longer tonight. Every step he took felt like an eternity. The once familiar trees now seemed to loom over him like silent watchers, their shadows stretching out across the ground. The air was thick with mist, and Hiroshi's breath formed small clouds in the cool night air. His heart pounded in his chest as he drew closer to the water. He could feel the presence of the Kappa even before he saw it, the atmosphere charged with something ancient and dangerous. As he approached the river's edge, Hiroshi paused, looking out over the still water. The surface was calm, almost unnaturally so, as if the river were holding its breath, waiting. He could hear nothing, no wind, no sound of insects, no movement in the trees. Only the oppressive silence that seemed to fill the night. He stepped forward, his lantern casting a trembling light on the water's surface. "I'm here," Hiroshi whispered, his voice barely audible. For a long moment, there was no response. But then, just as he began to doubt himself, a ripple disturbed the stillness. The water moved in a slow, deliberate way, as though something large and powerful was rising beneath its surface. Hiroshi's heart skipped a beat as the Kappa emerged from the water, its grotesque form rising slowly. It appeared just as it had the night before, small, green, with sharp claws and a shell on its back. Its eyes gleamed with a wicked hunger, and the empty dish on its head glistened in the lantern's light. "You returned," the Kappa hissed, its voice dripping with malice. "Foolish human. You really think you can defeat me? Do you think you can undo what has already been done?" Hiroshi gripped the lantern tightly, his palms sweaty. His legs felt like they might give out beneath him, but he forced himself to stand tall. He had no choice now but to face this monster. He had to remember the elder's words, the dish on its head was the key. He had to get it to bow, to spill the water and weaken the Kappa. The Kappa's grin widened as it stepped forward, the water sloshing around it. "You will be mine, Hiroshi. You and everyone else who dares approach me. I have been waiting for this moment." Hiroshi took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "No," he said firmly, taking a step closer. "I will not let you take anyone else. I will stop you." The Kappa laughed, a harsh, gurgling sound that sent chills through Hiroshi's spine. "You think you can stop me? You think I am afraid of you? You are nothing. Just a boy, in my world." Without warning, the creature lunged forward, faster than Hiroshi had expected. He staggered back, barely avoiding its claws as they slashed through the air. The Kappa's speed was terrifying, and for a moment, Hiroshi feared it would grab him, drag him into the water, and end everything right then and there. But Hiroshi remembered the one thing the elder had said: the Kappa had a weakness. The water in its dish. He needed to make it bow, to break its pride and strength. He took another step back, baiting the Kappa to approach. The creature snarled, its eyes gleaming with anger as it lunged once more. This time, Hiroshi was ready. With a swift motion, he swung the lantern in front of him, the light flashing in the Kappa's eyes. The creature recoiled, momentarily disoriented. Hiroshi saw his opportunity. "You want to take me? Then come get me." He held the lantern high, its light blinding, and with all the strength he could muster, he dashed forward. The Kappa, unable to resist the challenge, leaned forward, its head bowing slightly, just enough for Hiroshi to see the dish on its head clearly. In that moment, Hiroshi did something he didn't think he could do. He rushed forward and pushed the lantern into the Kappa's face, causing the creature to stumble backward in pain and shock. The Kappa's head tilted in an awkward angle, and the dish, which held the water that powered the creature, tipped over. The water poured out, spilling onto the ground, and the Kappa let out an ear-piercing screech. Its body shook violently as the strength drained from it. The once powerful creature now appeared smaller, weaker, its body crumbling as it fell to its knees. The glow in its eyes dimmed, and the terrifying grin faded into a snarl of pain and frustration. Hiroshi stood there, panting, his heart racing, watching the creature writhe in the dirt. The Kappa was no longer the invincible being it once was, it was vulnerable. The ritual had worked. Hiroshi stood motionless, staring at the Kappa as it writhed and convulsed on the riverbank. The lantern in his hand still flickered weakly, casting faint shadows over the creature's shrinking form. The once powerful Kappa was now a mere shadow of its former self, its body trembling as the last of the water spilled from its dish. Hiroshi felt a sense of relief wash over him. He had done it. He had broken its power. But as the creature's body collapsed, something strange began to happen. The Kappa's skin began to glow faintly, and its eyes, those eerily glowing eyes, flared up once more intense than before. Hiroshi's heart skipped a beat. The creature wasn't defeated yet. It was still fighting back. You think you've won?" The Kappa's voice was now strained, but still menacing. "Foolish human. You can't defeat me. Not while I still have control over the river." Hiroshi took a step back, his breath shaky. He had to finish this. The elder had said that the ritual was only part of the solution. He needed to take one final step to ensure the Kappa would never return. The Kappa snarled, its body slowly rising once again, despite the lack of water in its dish. It was as if the river itself still held a power over the creature, one that it couldn't let go. The Kappa's claws scraped against the earth, and with a roar, it lunged toward Hiroshi. This time, Hiroshi didn't hesitate. The fear that had once paralyzed him was gone, replaced by the urgency of the moment. He could feel the Kappa's malevolent energy pulsing through the air, but he had a purpose now, to end it once and for all. Without thinking, Hiroshi hurled the lantern into the Kappa's face. The glass shattered upon impact, the fire inside flaring up and spilling hot liquid across the creature's skin. The Kappa screeched in agony as the flames licked at its green flesh, but the fire seemed to have no effect. It didn't burn as it should have. Hiroshi stumbled back in shock, realizing that the fire wasn't enough. The creature was bound to the river's darkness. It would take more than mere fire to finish it. He needed to call on the last part of the Elder's wisdom, the final way to banish the Kappa for good. The Kappa feeds on souls, the Elder had said. And its strength is tied to the water. If you can force it back into the river and drown it in the very depths it controls, you will sever its power forever. Hiroshi understood now. The Kappa was a creature of the river, but it could not exist without its connection to the water. It needed the river's dark force to survive. He wasn't just fighting the Kappa's physical form, he was fighting the very essence of the river itself. Summoning every ounce of courage, Hiroshi ran toward the edge of the water, the Kappa hot on his heels. It screeched, its eyes blazing with fury, but Hiroshi had a plan. He had to take it back to where it belonged. He had to force the Kappa into the river's depths. Come on! Hiroshi shouted, spinning around to face the creature, taunting it, pulling it forward. You want to take me? You want my soul? Then come get it. The Kappa lunged once more, but this time Hiroshi sidestepped, grabbing a large, heavy rock from the ground. He hurled it toward the creature, striking it with a force that caused the Kappa to stagger backward. The force of the impact caused the Kappa to stumble, its body shaking violently. As the Kappa struggled to regain its footing, Hiroshi seized the moment. He charged forward and, using all his strength, shoved the creature into the water. The Kappa flailed and hissed, trying to resist, but the current of the Kawa seemed to pull it in with an unnatural force. Hiroshi watched, heart pounding in his chest, as the Kappa was dragged deeper into the river's dark embrace. The creature's claws scraped against the muddy riverbed, but it couldn't fight the water. The river was its true master, and it was here that it would finally meet its end. No, the Kappa whispered, its voice trembling with fear. This is my domain. I cannot. I cannot. The Kappa's voice faltered, its form dissolving into the water. It screamed one last time, the sound echoing through the river, before it was swallowed whole by the dark depths. The river went still once again. The silence was deafening. Hiroshi stood there, staring at the now calm water, his heart still racing. The danger was over. The Kappa was gone. But the cost of his victory weighed heavily on him. He had faced something ancient, something far darker than he had ever imagined. The Kawa, the river, had claimed its prize, but Hiroshi had stolen it back. The river remained still. The mist that had clung to the air now began to dissipate, revealing the first signs of dawn breaking over the horizon. The early morning light cast a soft, golden hue across the water's surface, as if the Kawa itself had been cleansed of the evil that had once haunted it. Hiroshi stood at the river's edge, his body trembling, his mind still reeling from the events of the night. The Kappa was gone. For now, the village was safe. But Hiroshi knew that the battle he had fought wasn't just one for survival, it was a test of strength, courage, and spirit. He had faced his deepest fears and had come out on the other side stronger, but the weight of what he had done still lingered. He glanced back toward the village, where the first signs of life were stirring. The villagers would soon rise, unaware of the danger that had nearly claimed them all. Hiroshi couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility. The Kappa had been defeated, but he knew it wouldn't be the last supernatural threat to emerge from the shadows. There would always be more legends, more monsters lurking just beyond the veil of reality. He turned and began walking back toward the village, the events of the night weighing heavily on his heart. As he passed the old shrine at the village's entrance, he paused for a moment to pay his respects. The shrine was dedicated to the river gods, guardians of the Kawa who had been called upon by the villagers for generations. Hiroshi knelt before the stone altar and bowed his head. "Thank you," he whispered softly. "Thank you for giving me the strength to face it." A cool breeze swept through the trees, and the feeling of peace that washed over him made him believe that the Kawa's spirits had heard him. It was a sign that the river had been restored, that the balance had been returned, even if only temporarily. Hiroshi knew he would never forget the horrors he had witnessed, the Kappa, the struggle, and the terror of the night. But in that moment, he realized something. His journey had not been just about defeating a creature. It had been about understanding the delicate balance between the human world and the supernatural forces that lurked just beyond it. As Hiroshi stood up and began walking back toward the village, he could already hear the voices of the villagers calling out, greeting the new day. The sun had risen, casting its warm light over the landscape, and for the first time in what felt like ages, Hiroshi felt a sense of peace. He would never forget the lessons he had learned, about courage, about the river, and about the creatures that roamed in the darkness. The Kappa might have been defeated, but there were many more stories to uncover, more ancient forces that lay hidden beneath the surface of everyday life. Hiroshi's journey was far from over. He had only just begun to scratch the surface of the mysteries that surrounded him. As the village came to life and the morning light filled the air, Hiroshi knew he had a new purpose: to protect his home, to uncover the unknown, and to never let the darkness claim anyone again. The night was long, but with every new dawn, there was hope. And so, Hiroshi's story became one of legend, a tale passed down through generations, a reminder of the dangers that lie in the shadows and the courage it takes to face them.